Only a couple words today, I promise. And number one, it's going to be comorbid conditions with ASD. The most important ones, I believe, are epilepsy, GI, digestive system, as well as certain mental conditions like OSD, anxiety and depression. Did I forget anything very important? Yes, I did. And that's going to be sensory processing disorder. All of those ones can really help with diagnosis of ASD, but we need to be able to distinguish them between ASD itself. So what necessarily is a part of diagnostic criteria for DSM-5? Right now, basically mostly in the USA and in very many Western European countries, are similar symptoms, and the two most important ones that are included in the diagnostic criteria that is used in the USA right now is social communication difficulties, I'm putting it like in my vocabulary, and restricted behavior pattern. What is there on the spectrum in those two conditions? Well, number one is, and we're talking right now mostly about ASD1 or AS or Asperger's. Now, it used to be Asperger's before DSM-5. What is included in the difficulty in communication? Well, very often people with ASD, they only have like an on-off button in communication. So if they trust the person, they can be very open and they cannot lie and they do not know how to distinguish if the person is trying to lie to them. So it's an easy target to trick them. There are easy targets to be tricked and to be lied to, but that's what it is. That's what it is. It's called theory of mind. And, you know, to a certain degree, people with ASD, of course, can learn to lie sooner or later, but they are not perfect at it. They're not very quick, and especially in certain situations and conditions, they just can't read those social cues and non-verbal communication details. So, but on the other hand, they are extremely open people, and they, that's a plus. That's a plus. So what is the difficulty in behavior and in the patterns of routines? And I would say here, for people with ASD, we can use a very interesting metaphor, or two. We can use two metaphors. So one metaphor will compare, I will not say who will compare, I'll just give you the metaphor first. So one metaphor is going to be a train and a car. So that's an easy one probably. So if you are driving a car, you can be more flexible, although if you're on a track and you're in a modern train, you can go extremely fast, but you're not as flexible anymore, because when you switch from one track to another track, that's where the energy goes. That's where the difficulty comes. So people with ASD can be extremely fast and working very, very hard when he or she is on the track, when he or she is going, you know, in a train, on the track of the special interest of the area that he or she is knowledgeable in. And on the other hand, the person, the neurotypical, is more flexible and can change faster. Another very good analogy that I really like is the analogy of a person on the bicycle and a person who walks. So you can say that a person on the bicycle is faster than the person who walks, but I will tell you, not necessarily, especially when the person who walks needs to go upstairs or downstairs, and the person on the bicycle, usually it's pretty hard to carry your bicycle upstairs. So the person with ASD can be compared to the person on the bicycle. He or she can ride a bike extremely fast, but again, the person without a bike is better at maneuvering. So that's what it probably is, the difference between the person with ASD and the neurotypical person about the restricted behavior. Good things about SPs are that they can work very long on a certain project and they need to have it done. They just need to have it done. They like to start and to finish. And SPs feel time differently. So when SPs are in the area of their special interest, when they're working on the project that they like, time doesn't exist for SPs. And SPs they actually gain energy rather than waste on working on the project. You can see that, don't you get tired? That's how they gain their energy, by working on the projects that they like. They actually, the hard portion is to switch from one activity to the other activity. And SPs don't really multitask. They cannot really they just don't multitask, period. So that's the thing, the modern world actually asks, you have to multitask. Usually we still multitask. That's not a good thing for SPs to multitask a lot. It's just not. And a very interesting thing I wanted to share is a myth about SPs not being able to understand social cues. It's not that they don't understand, it's that they don't have time sometimes to notice them, because Asperger's or ASD is a processing disorder, and that's also the processing speed and just certain things the brain does not notice. Just because the brain is so overwhelmed with other things and constantly process a lot of sensory information that neurotypicals just don't process, period. It's just not there for them. They just don't bother, with it. They just don't. So there is certain parts of the brain behind the ears that is connected to the processing information that the brain receives from the sight, from the vision, from the eyes. And it's not the vision itself, but it's actually the processing of the movement. Okay, that's more like neurology. Processing of the moving objects. And people with ASD have difficulties with that, to the extent that there are certain things they don't see when it's moving. So when the face is, like when the person is talking and communicating, the brain just doesn't see certain things. And if you show a static picture or a person you know very well, and there is just one person, and your brain is capable of understanding and seeing that, what's going on. So the person with ASD is capable of reading social cues or like facial expressions or nonverbal expressions at a static or like at a picture. So if you just take a test, and they show very often people with ASD can score pretty high, definitely on the normal level, the level of the norm, maybe definitely not above the normal level, but closer to the normal of those nonverbal cues. But if it's in real life, it's a processing disorder, so people won't be able to notice this. So that's an interesting thing. And another interesting thing, I think, is a very easy, it's also a comorbidity of ASD, is a condition of recognizing faces. So people with ASD have a lot of difficulties with facial recognition, and to the extent that some people don't recognize faces, period, or some on the other side of the spectrum, you need more time, a lot more time to learn to recognize faces. Yes, and especially if those faces have no hair, no beard, no glasses, no hat, and just the eyes and the nose and the mouth and maybe. So yeah, so that's a very, very great difficult. And so that's an interesting thing because people with ASD don't really see faces the same way as people without ASD, neurotypicals, and very often there is also a myth that people with ASD don't really look in the eyes. Well, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't really look at the eyes, but it depends on so many things. So very often people with ASD like to look at the face of a person because it's easier to read and to concentrate on what the person is saying when they are listening. There is a possibility that people with ASD want to look towards the face. Do they look necessarily in the eyes? That's a question. But maybe they're reading the lips more than the eyes. And that's because it's harder just to process auditory information. And on the other hand, some people with ASD tend to just turn their face and turn the ear towards the one who speaks and just get the audio rather than the visual information. So that can, be different. But when a person with ASD necessarily speaks, not listens, he or she very often would not look at the person he or she talks to, not because he or she doesn't want to, but because the way that he or she downloads information from the brain, that's how it works. So if you have any suggestions, topics, or you want to share something, I would absolutely be willing to talk on any of the ASD related topics. And I'm glad that there are so many people today sharing the information, the knowledge, the acceptance of people with ASD. We're not there yet. We are not there yet about acceptance. We're not there yet about accepting ourselves. We're not there yet accepting others that are different from us. We're not there yet as a society. And more than that, information about ASD is so not spread, even among the medical personnel. You will be shocked what you can hear from medical personnel. You would be shocked. All the way from everyone has a certain amount of ASD. No, not everyone. Not everyone does. To the, why would you care about ASD? You can't really cure it. People with licenses, doctors say those things. So we're not there yet as a society. We still need much more of autism awareness, of spreading the knowledge about autism. We still need to do much more. And of course, the acceptance and understanding that even if we're talking about the inclusion, which is by itself a good thing. I mean, let's talk about inclusion. Let's just include all together. Do we want to really? On whose terms? On whose terms? If you would include a student with ASD in the classroom full of NTs and on NTs terms, where it's a lot of noise and fluoro, like the lights, and all the social difficulties, that's not what a person with ASD wants when he or she wants to study. So let's think and rethink a little bit about the necessity to accommodate the classrooms to their needs. Okay, for now, I wish everyone all the best and talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.